Good evening. It's 6 o'clock, September 13th, 2011. This meeting of Yountville Zoning and Design Review Board is now called to order. Sandra, tonight will you take roll call attendance, please?
Member Wennerberg.
Here.
Member Durham.
Here.
Member Gates.
Here.
Chair Janes.
Here.
And let the record reflect that Vice Chair Anglin is excused.
Thank you, Sandra. For the approval of the minutes of August 9th, any corrections? No. I will ask for a roll call vote on the minutes as well.
Member Wennerberg.
Approve.
Member Durham.
Aye.
Member Gates.
Approve.
Chair Janes.
I abstain as I was not present during the meeting. Thank you. Public comment. Hi there.
How you doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Would you like to talk to us about something not on the agenda?
No.
Okay, thanks. Seeing no one else and skipping over the vacant consent
You were not there on August 9th?
approval of,
Called to order by Chair James. Yeah.
oh,
Thank you.
I beg to differ. You were present.
No, you're quite right. I'm sorry, Sandra. I was looking at the approval of the minutes we talked about then, and I was thinking of our last meeting.
Okay.
So thank you. I'm red in the face, but I will change my vote on the minutes with all your permission to approve. All right. Wow, now where was I? You better know, because now I'm completely lost.
Public comment.
Okay, handled that. We're going to go right to the public hearing then. There's no
right.
consent. Thank you. Sandra.
Tonight you have before you a master sign plan amendment for 2 new signs at the Bartisono. Let me run the slideshow here. And they're proposing 2 new signs in addition to the existing sign package. And when Bartisono opened, they had a very understated sign package. It consists of the small, approximately 11 square foot freestanding sign that you see here in the photo that's within the landscape median on the driveway. And it really failed to communicate the site to guests and the public. And so the applicant requested approval of a second freestanding sign, and this one is at the corner, at the southwest corner of the site, and it's directed toward Washington with the idea of getting motorists' attention that this is the Bartisono site. However, that's really failed to provide adequate and sufficient signage for the site as well. And there are unique circumstances that apply to the Bartisono. Its buildings are all inward-facing. The public areas of reception and the restaurant are located at the end of the drive aisle. And the in-rooms that do have frontage are obscured by the berm and the vines of the rows of grapevines. And the result is that the hotel facilities don't really have a strong street presence, and the operator indicates that that guests and customers often say how difficult it is to find the facility. So to remedy this, they are proposing 2 new signs, and you'll see them here generally on the 2 architectural elements that serve as announcing the entry to the site but are currently unsigned. One of the signs on the south side of the driveway will announce Bartisono, and the one on the north side of the driveway will announce Lucy, the restaurant and bar. And as you can see, the design and materials are designed to match the existing signs on site. They're individual letters in a rust finish, and they're pinned to these rammed earth walls. The proposed letters are all 2.5 inches to 12 inches in height, and they range between approximately 45 inches in width for Lucy to 60 inches wide for the Bartisono. Sign area is calculated at approximately 7.5 square feet, and this is computed by enclosing the copy of the sign within sets of parallel lines that define the sign area. And this is a standard that applies to buildings where signs are placed without a frame. And the idea is that the whole wall doesn't become a sign simply because a sign is affixed to it. And staff believes that this is the appropriate formula to apply to the walls in question, which recognizes them as architectural features that will exist regardless of whether they have signs on them or not. And this interpretation is consistent with the sign code and the recognition that sign copy is one of the elements that conveys the sign message. And it also avoids the unnecessary measure of putting a frame around a building-mounted sign simply to reduce the area of that sign. And that's in keeping with the goals of the sign ordinance for design excellence and more creativity. This interpretation is also necessary for the signs to fall within the amount allowed under the master sign plan. And as a reminder, the sign at the southwest corner is 30 square feet. The freestanding sign at the entry is about 11 square feet. So if the full area of the rammed earth walls were counted at 80 square feet each, they would exceed what's allowed. And staff fundamentally believes that the rammed earth walls are architectural features to which signs are affixed rather than a typical freestanding sign structure, which where the only purpose is a sign. In any case, however, and out of an abundance of caution, we're suggesting that it be processed as an exception. And this is also to avoid the situation in the future where someone were to install architectural elements and come back and want to convert them to signs. We feel it very definitely applies to this property because the walls were always envisioned as architectural elements. So we are recommending that you approve the exception, and if you do so, we ask that you make each of the findings that are in the staff report to support that. Another issue for your consideration is the idea of freestanding signs under master sign plans and the rules that apply, which limit the number of freestanding signs to one per elevation. And in this case, it would be the existing sign in the landscape median, and these two signs would then exceed that standard. And the other requires that all businesses or operations be listed or stacked on that freestanding sign. And in this case, they're proposing one for either side of the driveway on the existing signs. And again, staff believes that these are architectural elements, so this standard should not necessarily apply, although we're suggesting that you apply the exception standards in the findings. And also, more as an informational note, is this plaque that they're proposing for the back side of the monument on the south side of the driveway. And it includes the story of the Bartisono family, the site, the hotel, and it creates really a point of interest for pedestrians that are on the walkway between the hotel and the street. Because it's on the back side of the wall and not visible from the street, it wouldn't be counted toward the master sign plan. So that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions, and the applicant is also here to give a presentation.
Thanks, Sandra. Questions of staff to begin?
Yeah, I've got a question. Is there, I walked down there, is there any issue with the fact that the other they're now going from 2 signs to 4, all within a very small space? Is there any issue with the fact that that first sign that went up on the next to the park is 33 feet, or approximately more like 35 feet from the other sign? That it appears to be more, it appears to me now that it's just a cluster of signs.
No, we consider the one at the southwest corner more directed to Washington, so a different frontage.
Okay.
Whereas the ones on Yount, we have the one freestanding sign, and then the 2 new signs, which may be more akin to a building sign. And they could have building-mounted signs in addition to the monument sign. They simply don't really have a visible wall where they could affix those. So
Okay.
this is an alternative that works for the unique circumstances of the site.
Okay. And so just so I understand correctly, it's an exception because exactly what I was thinking of is what's to stop anybody else from building 3 architectural elements at the new businesses on the north side of town. So it's an exception for that reason.
For the factual circumstances that apply to this property, which make it unique and unlike any other property, yes, and to avoid that exact
Okay.
situation you just described.
Thank you.
Were the architectural features where the signs are going, they've been there since the beginning of they've been there?
They have. They were always
Was the
envisioned
idea
to
of
mark the
sign
entry.
being there or
No, they were a series of walls that are used throughout the site. There are 3 of these that are located at the motor court, and they had originally planned more of these walls at each of the building clusters that were eventually eliminated from the design, but they serve a purpose just themselves, a design element.
Okay.
Just a small difference. I don't know if it really matters or not. In the report you give us now, you talked about the sign on Yount being a directional sign,
No, the one on Fennell.
on Fennell being the directional sign? Okay. Then that clears up my question.
Any others, Rob?
Nope.
My question, Sandra. Sign area, or allowed signage, is calculated based on building frontage, street frontage, I should say. And this came up, I believe, at
Building frontage, you were right.
building frontage. This came up at Ranch Market, I believe, even though Ranch Market, like this operation, has 2 streets. There's nothing in the ordinance that says the signage needs to be divided up corresponding to the streets. In Ranch Market's case, all the signage is quite naturally on the front of the building.
Correct.
Okay, great. I thought that was the case, but I thought it was worth verifying. The way this sign ordinance describes display surface, it's kind of tough to shoehorn in because it really only talks about wall-mounted signs. Am I missing something? That display area is calculated means the area of a sign without a border placed on a wall of a building. Where, if anywhere, does the sign ordinance tell us how to calculate sign area for a freestanding sign?
It's silent as to other signs other than a building, and that's why we've applied it in this case because of the similarity of the structures. However, for a freestanding sign where the only purpose is to announce or convey a sign message, it's typically been calculated as the full area of the monument or freestanding structure. It doesn't serve any other purpose than as a sign, so the full area should be counted.
I understand, but one could argue that there's some flexibility in that definition since the ordinance is, in fact, silent on what constitutes display area of a freestanding sign or any sign not mounted to a building.
And that exactly is behind staff's recommendation that it's appropriate application in this case.
Am I correct, if this proposal is approved, there will be a total of 4 freestanding signs?
Yes.
Okay, where 1 is allowed by the ordinance?
Well, 5 because there is a freestanding directional sign.
The directional sign is exempt from
Right, okay.
regulation here, so I'm
Right,
only
okay.
counting the 4 that
4.
just like, I'm not going to count that one. We have no jurisdiction, so it's lovely, but I don't think we should.
Well, let me back up. I don't know whether I would call them freestanding signs because these are signs affixed to an architectural element.
So, well, I think we can't have it both ways. They either need to be freestanding signs or they're affixed to something and we decide how to calculate the sign area. That's my opinion, and so maybe that's not as much of a question. But an architectural element, I think if we look elsewhere in the ordinance, those are going to be things like eaves and cornices and overhangs, things that are commonly part of a building.
Well, a perimeter wall would not be considered a freestanding sign. It would be considered a wall, and this first and foremost is a wall rather than a freestanding sign. That designates that it's mostly a sign.
So
This is a wall upon which a sign is affixed.
A freestanding wall upon which a sign is
Okay, well, I
I think we need to be careful there, because if we determine it's a freestanding sign, well, I suppose that's why I'm suggesting all the exceptions. So we could call it that.
right, well, if it's not a building, which I think we can agree it is not, and if it's not a freestanding sign, then what is it? Then it's a sign that doesn't fit any definition we currently have.
Right.
It's, okay, and maybe that's a good point. Those are my questions of you for now. Would you guys like to tell us something?
I do have a
Sorry.
follow-up of staff, sorry, that came
All
up.
right, yeah.
There is another sign of similar nature correct? The one that does face yawned. It's a rammed earth wall.
Aesthetically, it's
slash
very similar.
sign. And how did we calculate the area for that one?
The full area of that structure, because that was always presented as a sign, so it was always a freestanding sign. It was nothing before it was a sign.
Rob, that prompts me to ask a question, too. Terrible. If we took the most restrictive possible, I think, definition of sign area, which would be the total area of these things
Yes.
that could display signage, it would be roughly 201 odd square feet. A
Yes,
30
exactly.
Where the property's allowed 167.5. I mean, I'll repeat, that would be the strictest possible definition, but that would be a fair statement, correct? Okay.
And that could have been the other direction that staff's recommendation for an exception took as to total sign area versus,
Right now, I just want to go with my eyes looking forward and wide open. And so we have a question about what is a freestanding sign? What is display area on a non-wall mounted sign, non-building wall mounted sign? Okay, thanks. Would you guys like to tell us something?
No, I don't have anything to add to that, really. I mean, she obviously articulated this better than we could ever do.
I feel that way when I read the minutes. I'm like, wow, I'm so much smarter when she writes it down.
But beyond that, no, I don't have anything to add.
And I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. You need to come up to the mic. You mentioned a calling. Could you explain further, please? Or was that sotto voce intentionally?
Yeah, it was supposed to be subtle back there, so you couldn't hear me.
So I need you to start back from the beginning, and I didn't hear any of your comments because they weren't at the mic, so we need to hear them all.
Okay, I said I didn't have anything to add. I
Okay.
said she articulated it better than I could.
Great,
I
we
said she
agree.
may have missed her calling because what she's doing. I mean, she could be a speaker for the House. You know? That's what I was trying to say.
Right.
But beyond that, I'm waiting to hear how you guys view. I mean, I heard your questions, but I haven't quite heard your responses to where this is going to go. So I think when we get there, then I may have something to say if it doesn't go in our favor. But
Well, the
at
way
this
the
point-
process works, forgive the interruption, is we hear the report, we ask questions of staff, you can make a presentation, we might ask questions of you. Then once we just come back and discuss and take a decision, your time to speak is over unless we specifically invite you.
Okay.
So this is a great opportunity if you have a point you'd like to make to do so, because we don't have to open up the deliberations
Got
and
it.
comments.
Got it. No, I think that they fit well with the property. Obviously, they look identical in nature as to what the pedestrian sign is on the corner of your park area. I think they're inset enough off of the street to where they're not going to create a traffic hazard. And I think they blend really well with everything that we have there, as far as whether you consider it an architectural element or you consider it a freestanding sign or however you want to articulate that. I think it belongs and it suits the property, and I don't think it's going to stand out like and create a nuisance for the town. I think it's suiting for the property, and I think it's great for the property for the town. So that's really all I have to say. I think it was well done from our design, from Bob Sanders behind us, and I hope you feel the same way, and then we follow suit and we put it up. I think that there's a lot of things in your ordinance that kind of leave it vague, so it's hard to know whether you're in or you're out on the design phase as to how you proceed with the actual design. So, but beyond that, I guess we'll find out how you folks feel about it, and we'll go from there. In the event that it's not accepted, then I guess we'll have to go back to the design phase under your guidance.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you anticipate needing or ever wanting additional signage than what you propose here,
No, I do not.
with what's existing and what you propose?
No, and frankly, I feel even though there are architectural elements, I think they've been missing this from day one, frankly. And I think a freestanding sign outside of it going anywhere else on the property except for these two elements, I think would be the wrong thing to do. I think this is the proper thing to do, and anything beyond what we already have existing, this is not a necessity.
Great. Any other questions of the applicant? Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, sir, did you want to speak as well?
I'm Robert Sanders.
Hey, Robert.
How are you?
Yeah, good.
I'm an ex-city planner, I manufacture signage, and I love this project. It's all green, LEED, but I just think it's so understated. We have rusted letters on this variegated rammed earth surface, so it's very understated, and it's still very subtle to find the entrance to this big complex. And there's also the maturity of all the landscaping now really is cool because it subtly frames this type of sign. So it's just my feeling. I'm from Sonoma. I do a lot of sensitive signage, but I think this is a pretty nice signage program for their entrance, and still quite understated. So thank you.
Thanks very much. So shall we just, who'd like to begin? Trying to lay out a path. we can
Well,
follow.
perhaps before you get started, I have a suggestion if you want to foreclose the ability to ever have more signage.
And you're taking my motion away from me.
Then,
That's
yeah,
why,
please take
that's why I
that.
asked the question. So then, Mr. Whenever you,
I guess I can start.
I will if you don't wish to.
Oh, well, I don't want to take it away from you then.
Sandra already did.
Well, he gave me the heads up.
So, everything on that property, and I think including this, has been done really tastefully. I think from a planning perspective, we have a real challenge, however, which is it's really difficult for me not to call these 4 signs freestanding signs. They look like ducks, they walk like ducks, I think they're ducks. It's a freestanding structure that supports a sign. So I think that's a river to cross. Secondly, the area calculations. There's some ambiguity there in the ordinance, which I think is helpful to the application on how to calculate the area. However, I note in the past on the sign that was added on the south west corner of the property and at Hotel Yountville, we calculated the entire surface capable of displaying signage to be sign area. So with that, there's, in my view, 2 hurdles to cross. Number of freestanding signs, the area. With that said, I go back to what I see as it's been done tastefully. What I could support is if it were presented in 2 ways. One, I'd like the sign area to be calculated based on measuring all of the areas suitable to display sign, and then make the exceptions based on its 200 square feet being approved where 167 feet is being allowed, so that we're not shoehorning into, let's allow structures to be built and then signs to be added smaller later. So make the exceptions for the reason you've given, but make it on the sign area. Secondly, for the town to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the operator of the business stipulating that they will not seek to expand this master sign program in the future, and in fact, a precondition of any alterations would be to remove area that's over the 167 square feet. The applicant's already stipulated that they're happy with this amount of signage, and in my mind, that's a happy median, because the project is unique. One of the benefits we get as residents, and one of the challenges, I don't know if you were around when it was developed, because I don't recognize you, I'm sorry, was to keep all those buildings low and the berm and the vineyards so that we could see the eastern hills and have the buildings obscured. In a way, that comes back to hurt the applicant because there's no building area to put a sign on. So I don't want to overly penalize them for concealing their buildings so tastefully. So I've spoken at length, but a motion I could support involves calculating the full possible area at 200 square feet, counting them all as freestanding signs, entering into finding the exceptions after that, the findings rather, and then an MOU being executed between the town and the applicant. There's my bolt. I'll be quiet now.
Why is everybody looking at me?
Making sure I'm going to.
Yes, I think you said that very eloquently about, it's exactly a struggle I'm having as well, which is, I wrote down, looks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It looks like a sign. From day one, when that thing was built, people said, when are they going to put the sign up? When are they going to put the sign up? When are they going to put a sign up? Because it looks exactly like a sign. And now we even have another sign on the property that it looks exactly like it, but that one's a sign and this one's not all a sign. Part of it's a sign. And part of it makes me think, looking at Hotel Yountville as another example. So if they had another freestanding stone wall, they wouldn't count the original one, or they would count the original one, and there's a lot of exceptions going on there that I also am struggling with. I think it blends. I like the look of it. The property is fantastic. The aesthetic is amazing. It's subtle. It's understated. All those good things. I don't think that's a question here at all. The question for me is specifically that it sure, gosh darn, looks like a sign. And I would be supportive, too, of the calculation of the whole thing. I think that's the only way you could go, is to calculate the whole thing as a sign. I'd call it a wall if it were holding something back or up. I don't think it's actually a wall. So I don't know exactly where I'm standing quite yet. Clear enough?
I'd just say I've walked the property and think it's like everybody else. It's a first-class property, and I just don't have any problem with aesthetically what this is going to look like. And I can certainly understand, as investors, you want to draw your people in as much as possible, and I support that thoroughly. And some of these other details I would like to hear more discussion on, but overall, I think it's a terrific plan and support it.
And so we've been talking about 4 freestanding. There's these 2, the other one on the southwest corner, and the
We approved
4
2 back last year in the low-income residential area, and then there was a directional sign in there. There was an ID sign and a directional sign. There were 2 of them
counting
very
those
close
on
to
the
each other
The
that we
4
approved.
If I may, Robert, the one on the southwest corner of the property, the one here in the drive aisle, the 2 under discussion tonight, everything to do with the affordable housing, separate parcel, separate control.
Oh, separate parcel,
Can't
okay.
tie the 2 together. And the directional sign for this property which lies on Fennell Road is more or less exempt from our review.
Gotcha. I stand corrected.
That's okay.
What? The southwest wall, corner one, is only 30 square feet. Okay. Because if we took out the other 2 freestanding signs, what would our calculation be? We'd be down 40.
160.
160.
So we'd
So there'd
still be
be in excess
over.
of no, there'd be
It'd
in
be
excess
under.
of 7 square feet that could be used.
Oh. Okay, then I know where I sit. Because that seems like an excess of signs in a small area, and I don't think all of them are necessary. So I would say keep the 2 big ones, go for it. I think those are natural places to put signs, and get rid of the small one in the middle and the big one on the southwest corner.
That's perfect.
Jeff, ready to take a crack?
Just to, I'll be brief, but just, it's my understanding it's the same management and the same owners as from the day the hotel opened. And as a business owner myself, I find it very interesting that all of a sudden the customers or the guests are having issues finding the hotel. I would think they've had that issue since day one when these architectural elements were put in. And if I heard you correctly, they were supposed to be consistent throughout the property, but these architectural elements, but then they didn't become part of the final plan as well. So now all of a sudden you have, is that
There
correct?
are 3 of them that are used at the motor court
Okay.
at the end of the
Okay.
drive aisle.
Okay. So I just, it looks like a sign to me. It's looked like a sign to me from day one. And I find it interesting that it's just, I think, it appears to me the median sign at the very least should be removed. It seems, it's now just a cluster of signs saying all the same thing. Why do you need Bartisono on the right and Bartisono in the, not less than probably 10 feet away from it?
Well, there is one item that's on the small sign in the medium.
Restaurant, spa, hotel?
It's the address.
Oh, okay.
But you're correct that those others are repetitious.
That wasn't
Other
helping
words.
people find it by having the address on there anyway, so.
The address would be required for
Correct.
fire
No, no,
purposes and
correct.
others.
So, I mean, and I understand the sign on the southwest corner as well, as people are coming in. And I find it interesting that they put it on that side of the street, but there was no thought ever given to people coming the other way as well.
Well, I think the majority of traffic comes,
Yeah, no, understood,
intersection.
understood. But now,
And
that
actually,
that
there
appears
was
not
some-
to be the case.
well, there
Because
was
people
some.
can't find it.
Right. And that's been the case from day one, of course. It's nothing new. They had asked about having another sign at Fennell and Yount to catch that traffic, and we thought that that was too much. We could support the one they had facing Washington, but at that point, people are coming from a residential area, and it didn't serve the same downtown commercial core that the sign at the corner did.
All right.
But it catches all the people that miss it and do U-turn
Yeah.
and have to come back.
Very good. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Do you want to hear any further testimony?
If they'd like. I'm open to it.
Okay.
I know that originally, the reason why the signs were not, the little tiny sign was there, and the other signs were value engineered out under the development. I'm pretty certain that's what happened. Same with the rammed earth walls. It all came down to financial. And who you were dealing with in the beginning was Philip Sherburne, who is no longer part of the project. And now you're dealing with MTM Management, which has now become Benchmark. I'm the director of property management. I know that we know each other. Sandra and I know each other, but I've never spoke to the rest of the house here. And the other thing was trying to draw more also to the restaurant, Lucy's, rather than, never did name the restaurant. It was just kind of part of the hotel. And now we're trying to have a little bit more of enlightenment, a little bit more of a draw from our hotel guests than anybody else that's looking for something else in town. And the little sign in the middle and the medium, that was just I think amongst everybody that was part of that was a temporary sign. If in fact you want that removed and leave the address there, I don't see that being an issue. I think it's so minute and so missed that it's really going to blend in, and you're really not even going to notice it. I think that's a non-issue, at least in my opinion. But primarily, as everybody has said, when our guests are constantly have never really known where the entrance to the hotel is. In fact, frankly, pedestrians or anybody that has not been invited to the hotel always wonder what is down there. You have no idea. I mean, it's common knowledge. Nobody knows what's down there unless they're directed or they call on the phone and ask, where are you at? We tell them where we're at, and they're still confused. So I think it's a real necessity that we have those signs there. But as to why it was never put up there, it all came down to dollar signs. Got valued out by Philip. So now we'd like to, bear the fruit and put it on the wall. So
Can I ask a question?
as far as the pedestrian sign on the corner of the park, we would not be interested in removing that. That was a $30,000 sign. And as she explained as to why that sign was there, it was more so for pedestrian traffic and to put people in the direction when they're at the center of town that are looking for Bardessono. You still need some type of direction to the entrance of the hotel, regardless of if that sign's there or it isn't. The existing sign that's there that's already been approved. So that's all we have. Thanks.
Oh, can I
Sorry,
ask
we
a
have
question?
another question for you.
Can I ask a question? What was the decision to put, because I hear about Bardessono, people can't find Bardessono, people can't find it. If you're actually driving north on Yount, you're not going to see that Bardessono sign. You're only going to see the Lucy sign.
No, you're going to see it. It's back far enough, and it's not at a 45-degree angle. It's probably about 20 degrees, I believe, off of the street. I mean, I don't have the actual dimensions. But once you've come in far enough, you can see that before you actually get to the entrance of the hotel. You'd have to, if you walk down there like Jeff did, I think you might be able to see my vision of what I'm saying. If you want to swap the two, we could do that as well.
There is a 300-year-old olive tree right there, and it's at least 35 degrees from the street. Can't imagine how you would see the face of that sign.
They just trimmed the one on the left.
Did they?
You can see it completely.
The one on the right.
On the left side where they want to say Lucy.
Okay.
I just walked by there yesterday. It's completely trimmed up, and the pictures these were taken well before it was trimmed?
So I'm talking about the tree on the right, but I assume all of them were,
The one on the right hasn't been done yet.
Yeah, it was
will
good.
be.
My groundskeeper got a little carried away with the outside of that tree. I was a little uptight with that, so that the ones on the right need to be under my guidance before they're trimmed. So that's why it hasn't been done yet.
All right, so you feel like they're both easily seen
I do.
driving down the street?
I do. But again, if the concern is that Bardesano is not easily seen, then that can be moved to the other wall, so you see it from the center of town. Again, it's not just driving traffic; it's also walking traffic, pedestrians. But yeah,
Thank you.
yep.
Sandra, is it a fair statement that were the drive aisle sign shorn of everything but the address numbers, it would then become an exempt directional sign? Mm-hmm. Okay, so in that example, that brings it down to 190 square feet based on the most restrictive reading, which is that everything capable of bearing signage is
Yes.
sign area. Does anyone want to take a crack at a motion, or do we need to talk more? Hearing none, I'll take a shot. You guys,
Yeah, go.
We'll give you moral support.
I prefer moral support, actually. So I'm willing to move approval of the sign application with the, and make the exception findings with the following caveats. One, the drive aisle sign be shorn of everything except the address, so it'll cease to be in the calculations. Two, that the exceptions we're making are predicated upon a sign area totaling 190 square feet, explicitly identifying each of the freestanding structures as signs in their entirety. Two, that we are approving an aggregate total of 3 freestanding signs, where 1 would typically be allowed. And thirdly, that the operator of the business enter into a memorandum of understanding with the town, memorializing this and agreeing not to pursue additional signage unless first the signage that would exist at that time is brought to within 1 freestanding sign, not to exceed 167.5 square feet. In essence, we're asking you to say, look, we're not going to be back with a different operator in 2 years needing more signage. Before we hear a second, maybe we can make this easier. No, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Okay. Motion carries. Thanks very much. Best of luck to you. You're welcome. Sandra, was that clear enough? All right. That was an interesting discussion.
It was.
We're going to skip the vacant presentation and discussion and go right to staff and board reports. I don't think we need a staff report on 9.1, 9.2, and 9.3. It was really well prepared for, if I may say so, last time. There are 5 of us. I'm having a tough go tonight. I can't count, and I can't remember where I am. So there are 5 of us, and we got 6 slots to fill. So everybody needs to sign up for 1, and 1 person needs to agree to do 2. Before we talk about those assignments, did Mr. Anglin give you any information?
He expressed a willingness to serve on any of the 3.
Okay,
we
so-
gave him the last 2 slots.
All right, and did
Here
he
we
say he
sign
would
you
do
up for
2? Or did he do?
No, he didn't say
Okay, but he said he'd be happy with any of the 3. Yeah, nice. So even though they're listed separately, and I understand why, I'm going to suggest we kind of try to do it all at once so that in piecemeal. I'm going to have the bad form to say the only one I'm really interested in is the zoning and design ordinance. I'll serve on another, in particular if that's what's necessary for somebody to do two, to fill it out. Does anybody else want to be so rude as, like I was, and just jump out and say, what is your first preference?
I have a personal interest in historic resources, historical preservation, those types of issues. I've never really worked around it or been on any committees or anything like that, but I just have a personal interest in it as a historian, basically. So I would have primary interest in that. And of the other two, I would have 9.1 as my second or co-equal choice.
Understood.
So to clarify, basically, we're each going to be on two, except one person's going to be on one, not the other way around. Correct?
We have
No.
6
slots.
slots to
Two for each
fill
of the
with
three.
5 people.
Gotcha, yeah.
But given my track record tonight, I had to think about it.
The math on that.
How many? So, anybody else want to express a strong preference for one or the other?
I'll do any of them.
I would say I have a slightly more preference to actually the one we haven't discussed, the ZRB responsibilities.
So, I think this is shaping out fairly easily then. I have a preference for 1, Robert has a preference for 2, Rob has a preference for 3, Jeff and Rob are easy, happily. Robert is the only person who gave a second choice, so that'd be number 1. Jeff.
If I could do it with
Oh,
one choice,
right,
I'd
right.
do it.
No, I'm sorry. I misspoke. I'm sorry. See, I can't count again.
If you need a back
No.
spot, then I'll fill in.
No, that's okay.
So it's going to be a straw
Jeff?
poll.
Don't care. You've got your crack at all
So I'll
3
do,
of them.
then I'll do 9.3.
Okay. So that's Rob and Jeff for 3. That's filled. I mean, we're going to
At
do
the
this
risk-
all at once when I'm going to get it done.
I'll do a second one.
Do you have
He'll kill me, but I'll do a second one.
right on? So
The
let's
historic
take
one is going to go on for years. So if that makes
Well-
a difference.
any idea where Rob should be placed? Is 1 or 2 a better fit? He's not here to speak for himself.
I thought he really, the way he was talking at the joint meeting, he was really leaning towards 1.
I agree.
In my,
Yeah,
in
I
my
would say
personal
2.
opinion.
I think you're right on.
Okay. Oops. And if there was some strong objection by the absent matter, I suppose we could try to horse trade amongst ourselves before we started meetings.
He'll have no problem with that.
Okay, great. So, if I've got this correctly, Jeff, thank you very much for agreeing to serve on 2. That was kind of you.
Very good.
So if I've got this right, we're agreed Jason, Janes, and Rob Anglin for 1, Robert Gates and Jeff Durham on 2, Rob Wennerberg and Jeff Durham on 3. Do I have that right? Do we all agree?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes, very good.
Anything else?
Yes, I have an offer to make to you for the Yountville Days Parade. You have an invitation to ride along on the Yountville trolley with the Parks and Community Services Commission, and you are entitled to bring friends and family if you'd like. So if you have an interest in that, why don't you let me know, and I'll pass that along to Samantha Holland Wagner, our Director of Parks and Rec.
When is it?
I believe it's October 2nd.
I think at the least all chairs should be on that trolley. I'm just saying.
On top.
That's
tied-
fine.
tied
Wherever
off.
you want,
Tied
wherever you
off.
want to go.
Tied off, rotten vegetables passed out in the street. Outstanding. When do you need to know, Sandra?
No firm deadline, just let me know within the next few weeks. We can get
Okay.
you on it.
Anything else for you guys? We all agree to adjourn?
So agreed.
Agreed.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Jason. Nice job.